Hello and good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us. Thank you for joining us today. Excited to put on this virtual roundtable with some friends of Firehouse here. This is the gathering, third gathering for some of us looking at PPE. So we're excited for this today. And please bring your questions to the group as we go through the program today. The program is How Your Gear Works with You, Flexibility, Fit, and Function. It's presented by MSA Globe. And today's, we've got three presenters. And we're going to kind of start with a roundtable, but again, we want to encourage engagement and make sure that you're putting your questions in so you can get the answers you're looking for. Our first panelist today is Caitlin Kelly. She's a customer service marketing manager for Globe. Also, Chris Mulker, he is a first responder sales manager for MSA. And finally, Jeff Sedovic, he is a business development manager for Tenkata Protective Fabrics. So all thank you for joining us. Excited for this. And we'll just jump right into it. But again, if you do have questions, please send them in and we will get to them throughout the course of the program here today. So again, we're here to look at the fit and functionality of firefighter turnout gear, right? It's changed a lot of discussions over the last few years about what's going on. A lot of meetings have been held about, especially with fit, right? As more women enter the fire service and fit and comfort is becoming a critical aspect of it. So, Caitlin, we'll start with you. Can you tell us why departments are supposed to pay careful attention to the turnout gear aspects as they design it?
Thanks, Peter. Really happy to join everyone today. So you're exactly right. Fit is such an important aspect to consider when selecting your structural turnout gear. Obviously, there are a number of factors that they need to consider when evaluating and then selecting their next spec. That ranges from the demographics of their department, as well as the region that they're servicing, incident operation needs, anticipated hazards and the severity of the hazards that they expect to encounter, and then other specialty response area needs, such as certain buildings or plants that may be in their area. So all of that is obviously really important, but we like to stress that fit is just as important as all of those needs. When you're thinking of what do firefighters need, they need to be able to act quickly and easily. They cannot have their turnout gear working against them. And how you ensure that their PPE properly fits them, is comfortable, is not nagging them, is not a problem, is the fit of that gear.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. And so to go beyond that, I guess we can say, I hate to say this, right? This is a pun, but to get to the fabric of the whole process of designing PPE. So Jeff, I'm going to kick it to you. We talk about risk assessment, right? That's a fire service term, but it goes at every level from fireground operations to managing a department to the gear itself. So can you talk about the materials that make up firefighter PPE and what our attendees today need to know about that, please?
So really the first part of the risk assessment, it's vitally important that they determine their level of performance they need from their outer shell, their thermal liner, and their moisture barrier, which we're really not talking about today. But the impact of those is going to not only impact the level of protection, durability, cost of ownership for the department, but also it's going to determine the flexibility and the comfort of the firefighters. So really, when they're doing this, they need to look at that performance level from the outer shell thermal liner and what their needs are, figure out what those composites are, and then from there go to the manufacturer level. So you go to Globe MSA, and then you can assess the fit and function of the cut and style. But it starts with those three layers.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. So, Caitlin, we'll go back to you. Let's talk a little bit more about fit, right? Again, I think it's a very broad topic when you look at it. It's about comfort, it's about flexibility, it's about dexterity when you're dealing with this. But even just, I was at a fire the other night and some firefighters were in gear. It's 100 plus degrees here in Texas. They were in gear for multiple hours, 20-minute break here and there. But as far as fit, comfort in the long run for a long duration incident. So can we talk a little bit more about that?
Definitely. So when we're discussing fit, it's obviously important to first start then with the demographics of the U.S. Fire Service. So when we look at who are the firefighters, who comprises of our first responder network, we're looking at about 9% of those are actually female firefighters. So really about 90,000, and then 20% of those 90,000, so around 17,000, are career female firefighters. So we want to make sure that we're paying careful attention to all firefighters and their needs, not just the majority. Again, knowing how fit impacts their performance on the fire ground. And what's so important about this is letting the data do the talking. So a really interesting study was conducted in 2021 by a Florida State University professor, Dr. McQuarrie. She did a lot of really fascinating work. I highly encourage everyone check out this report. It has a lot of great insights. But what really stuck out to me was the higher risk that female firefighters encounter on the fire ground compared to their male counterparts. It's actually a staggering number. It's over 30% higher risk of injury on the fire ground compared to their male personnel. This is why fire safety for all firefighters, each and every one, is important. When selecting their PPE, that selection committee cannot just look at what works for, call it 90% of their department, and then hope for the best for the remaining 9 to 10%. They need to make sure that that gear fits each and every firefighter properly. It's something that you can obviously tell we're very passionate about. It's something that our friends at the nonprofit Women in Fire is very passionate about. We want to make sure that this gear is providing safety for all firefighters, not just most.
Great. Thanks, Caitlin. And Chris, we'll jump over to you. And again, you have a fire service background too, so great question for you. But just talk about how Globe designs their gear for firefighters specific to fit.
Well, when it comes to fit, the way Globe designs things is based on years of history. So when you look at individuals, typically their chest size correlates with arm length, with dimension of the shoulders, all those sorts of things. So basically what Globe does, we do a grading system, whereas when you have a certain chest size, a certain collar dimension goes along with that. A certain shoulder length goes with that. A certain arm length goes with that. A certain dimension of the biceps goes along with that. A certain waist or sweep measurement, the bottom of the coat, goes along with that. But from there, we also do customization. So we can look at an individual, and if he doesn't fit into that, we can actually customize all those different areas. So, you know, the sleeve lengths, the elbow placement, the sweep measurement, the overall jacket length, pan and seams, knee placements, all those things, dimensions of the legs, are all customized based on the individual firefighter. One size doesn't fit all. And really from a safety standpoint, you have to have all those different measurements for each individual for them to be able to work and function properly. With that, women, Caitlin mentioned it, women and men are built differently. So there's a specific sizing for women as well as men. So instead of trying to put women into men's cut garments, which typically are big and bulky, we have specific sizes to meet women.
Great. Chris, and I apologize, I was going to ask you earlier on when we talked about understanding risk assessment and the purchasing process. For the committees that are working on PPE selection, what do they need to know about creating a risk assessment plan to help their departments purchase the proper equipment for their responsive needs, whether it's highly urban, suburban, rural, et cetera?
Yeah, actually, risk assessment is probably the least utilized thing out there in the fire service. Probably maybe 1 to 2% of fire departments actually do a risk assessment. But NFPA 1851, which is the standard for selection, care, maintenance, actually says a fire department needs to do a risk assessment. The importance of a risk assessment, or what it actually does, is it allows departments to look at the type of duties that they do, the geographic location. So for instance, like Texas, where it's really hot, looking at breathability and other things like that. In where I'm from, Michigan, we get a lot of cold climate times where we need more thermal insulation. So you look at the different geographic locations. You also look at the products that you're using, from gloves to helmets to boots to SCBAs to all the firefighting tools, if it's flashlights or radios, all those sorts of things, and really build the gear based on your specific department. That way, when you actually purchase it, you're going to get what you need versus maybe what somebody else tells you what they think you need.
Great. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Really good insight. And again, with 1851, it's important to understand what's designed there to help departments kind of navigate the challenges. So let's focus on function at this point of PPE. Caitlin, is a statistic, right? I mean, they're firefighters, they are fire departments, but really it's an all hazard response. So let's talk about the reality of what fire departments are doing and how that ultimately impacts functionality of PPE.
Exactly, Peter. So I think by now most of us have heard of the statistic that about 64% or nearly 2/3 of all calls that fire departments respond to require EMS or technical rescue services. So that's a pretty staggering amount, considering that less than 40% of calls are actual structural fires. So it's something that I know I've heard thrown around. It's really important. And obviously that's influenced then fire departments in their decision-making with lighter, more breathable gear to make sure that if they're not responding to a structural fire, they're instead responding to a vehicle extrication, for example, that they feel comfortable and safe still responding to that incident. So really interesting there, but a stat that I feel like is not discussed enough, I haven't heard it enough myself, is the amount of billion-dollar disasters and the rate at which they've increased in recent years. So we all know, we commonly refer to firefighters as our first responders, our first responder network. They are right there on the scene for a variety of responses. So now we're talking beyond EMS, technical rescue, even structural fires. We're talking about the type of incidences that are catastrophic. I mean, I think by now most of us have seen the really unfortunate situation that is going on in Hawaii right now. So those are the types of responses that firefighters need to be prepared for, and they need to be in PPE that functions properly when responding to those incidents. So this over 400% increase in billion-dollar disasters, this is since 1980. So again, really not a long period of time, and yet we're seeing more of those weather incidents, catastrophic events, that again, firefighters need to keep in mind when they're thinking through all of the scenarios that their firefighters are going to have to encounter. Obviously, that then affects training, but when we're looking at the spec of their turnout gear and how that fits them, how that functions on the incident, whether it's a fireground or a catastrophic event, we just want to make sure that they're thinking through then all of the variety of calls that they will be responding to and first on the scene to.
Great, Caitlin. Thank you. And I mean, the numbers are staggering. It seems that every week to 2 weeks, there's another disaster that's, requiring personnel from across the country to respond to mitigate this scenario. So, it's a growing problem that we're facing. And again, with firefighters being the first ones there and, often taking command and spending hours or days on scene. Great point. So, Chris, let's jump back over to you and talk about this, right? We've got these massive incidents almost on a daily, weekly basis at this point. How can gear be designed to address the various needs, whether it's structural or disaster response or, the repeated medical runs?
Yeah, a lot of times when we look at NFPA, and really NFPA is a minimum standard. Again, after looking at risk assessments and different things like that, we also need to look at or acknowledge the fact that, like Caitlin said, we do have these scenarios, and even if the fire loads have gone down, the time to flashover has actually increased dramatically. There are more flashovers than there ever have been, mainly because of all the plastics and everything else that firefighters are being exposed to on the fire scene. One of the things from a design standpoint that Globe developed, along with Tenkate, our partner in Tenkate, is our athletics gear. Over the past probably 10 years, manufacturers, we've talked about athletically cut gear, which is basically pleats and other expansion points within the gear to facilitate movement. But the difference with athletics is the mostly the outer shell. It's a stretch material similar to, for instance, what athletic or professional sports teams wear. Material that actually stretches with you to allow and to actually make that movement happen versus having to facilitate adding material into the garment, possibly making it more bulky, heavier weight. With athletics and the stretch material, we're able to make it a lot lighter, a lot more flexible, and allow it to, when you start to hit those resistance points, actually have some give to it to take stress off the joints. One of the leading killers of firefighters on scene still is cardiovascular events, which is, when you really look at it, it is raising of the core temperature. And how can we help to reduce or help firefighters work easier in their gear? And that's really taking stress off the body. So athletics is one of those products that we've developed to not only streamline the gear for that lighter weight, but really to be able to work or allow the firefighter to work easier in their gear.
Thank you, Chris. So Jeff, let's go back to you, right? So again, athletics is about creating comfort for the firefighter, for the users. Can you tell us about how the materials are designed and how that adds to the comfort when the PPE is made?
Sure. The interesting thing, like Chris mentioned, MSA Globe has taken great steps to figure out ergonomics and to make the gear work with you, not against you. And that's always been a challenge because on the material side, we were kind of behind that. It was bulky materials. It didn't stretch. So they had to do pleats and things like that. And they did some great advances in ergonomics. This next step with PBI stretch and athletics, what we've done is given them another tool so they can take the next step towards the future of firefighter PPE by giving that stretch, being able to move on to the next generation of ergonomics, not having to use that extra bulky material. So the PBI stretch material can provide that protection they need, the comfort they need because of the stretch without compromising any other issues. So they're going to be a lot more comfortable. The gear is going to work with them and not against them and be a lot more comfortable in the long run. So utilizing PBI and Kevlar in that outer shell, along with the stretch component, we're able to not sacrifice anything, but bring so much to the table as far as the comfort of the firefighter. Also, what's important is the outer shell with that stretch component gives you that ease of movement, as Chris mentioned. But as you have that outer shell moving, you have to have a component within the thermal liner as well. The thermal liner has to be able to move with the outer shell because that's going to constrict you on the inside. So there's stretch panels on the thermal liner, the titanium nano thermal liner on the interior of the garment. So they stretch together and work as a unit together. The other thing that in the material that helps with the comfort of the firefighter, as Chris said, core heat issues are huge, and we're really worried about comfort as well. So part of that thermal liner, that titanium nano or Caldura nano, is what's called Cool Derm technology, which is just a fancy name that Tenkata uses. And what that is moisture management. So just like every athlete, everybody else that does anything physical, they need that moisture management. So I always use an analogy of Nike Dry Fit or Under Armour. So what it does is, as your firefighter's exerting himself, he's producing sweat on his body. So this Cool Derm technology on the thermal liner against your skin takes that moisture and wicks it away from your body and increases the surface area, so it'll evaporate and turn to a vapor and get out of the system faster. Obviously not fast as you'd love it to because you have all these layers, right? But it's going to add to firefighter comfort. And the best way to describe that for firefighters is to think of a puddle in an apparatus bay. If you sit there and let it sit all day long, it's going to eventually evaporate if it's one of those days in Texas where it's 110 degrees. But if you go out there with a squeegee and squeegee it, you're increasing the surface area just like that thermal liner does, and it's going to evaporate quite quickly. So it's kind of that same concept. So it's all about the firefighters' ease of being able to work easier and not have his gear work against you, and to be comfortable.
Great. Thank you. And Kate, I'll jump back to you. So can you talk about how movement plays a role in the performance of PPE today?
Yes. So we discussed fit, how firefighters need to make sure they're comfortable, just like Jeff said, gear working with you, not against you. We talked about function, how PPE needs to address really such a variety of scenarios of incident operations that now all needs to be taken into consideration. But a third component that we feel is very, very important then to a turnout gear spec is the flexibility of that gear. Just as Chris and Jeff have spoken to, the ergonomics of that gear. And why that's important is really how firefighters now need to don their SCBA for longer periods of time through overhaul. So when you think about it, they're working longer, they're spending more time on the fire ground or other incident operations. If they're in the South, for example, I know they're having some crazy hot temperatures this week, past 100 degrees. So when they're wearing that gear, they're wearing it for longer to ensure that they're not encountering those hazardous particulates that will be coming off of the fire ground, just like Chris said, with the plastics. We need to make sure that then again, that gear is working with them, not against them. They have that flexibility as they move around. They're really comfortable in their gear so that it's not just functional, it's not just fitting them well, it's moving with them. It's that range of motion. And it really does come down to two elements: the design of the turnout gear itself, which is what we take a lot of work and pride in with what we offer with athletics, but then also the materials that go into that garment. Just as Jeff mentioned, working with our partners at Tenkata was critical to making sure that athletics was as flexible as we wanted it to be for firefighters.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. And so, Jeff, let's jump back to you. So the technical fabrics, again, how does that impact the flexibility of the PPE for the firefighters when they're wearing it?
Well, when we partnered with MSA Globe to develop this, we wanted to make sure we could give something to them for an outer shell and a thermal liner system that provided the maximum range of motion for the firefighter to give them the ability to work easier in the gear, and also not sacrifice things like the thermal break open strength, the thermal protection, and the breathability. And so with this combination combined with the athletics design, the best example that I always think of is if you're wearing traditional turnout gear and let's say you're pulling ceiling, you're going to do it and it's going to be a lot harder than if you were just wearing a t-shirt. When you get into something like athletics with that stretch outer shell, the thermal liner that stretches with it, and the comfort, you're going to be able to do it a lot longer without as much exertion.
Great, thanks. Chris, can you talk about some of the Globe Athletics features for flexibility? I know there's several from top to bottom, so can you detail some of those for us?
Yeah, when it comes to flexibility, it's really about all that movement. And you mentioned it. I've had experience in the fire service. I spent about 10 years as a firefighter. Jeff, my colleague there, has spent a lot longer in the fire service. But MSA as a whole, we have a lot of representatives that either are in the fire service or are retired out of the fire service that give great insight. But beyond that, in today's fire service, we really use voice of the customer, and it's looking at what do you like, what do you dislike, and what do you want to see change in your turnout gear. And one of the big things that pretty much everybody says is we don't like turnout gear because it's big and bulky. We want it to feel like a sweatshirt. We want it to feel like a pair of sweatpants. And a lot of things Jeff has kind of talked about help us to do that. But we've taken that one step further with that voice of the customer. For instance, like drag straps. NFPA mandates that you have to have a drag strap in the back of the jacket. In the athletics, what we've done is we've moved it up into the collar to get it off the back to reduce any kind of what we call roping effect, where it actually pulls across the shoulders, and then also making it more accessible. So with an SCBA, a gloved hand, because it's up into that collar, you can actually access it a lot easier. With the streamlining aspect of the garment itself, it is a lot more streamlined. It's more form fit on the body. We've also added elasticity into the waist of the pants. We've added elasticity into the sweep of the jacket. Because the material itself actually stretches and moves, we're able to basically pull it in, reducing those catch points. So when you're breaching a wall or crawling or whatever, you don't have that extra material that's kind of dragging and possibly getting stuck on nails and other things like that. From there, it's for instance, like the knees. If you actually would take a tape measure and put it from your waist down to your knee on the back side of your leg and actually bend, you'll see that your skin expands about 5 to 6 inches across the seat of the pants. Same thing with the front of the knees. So we built that into the gear itself so that when you crawl and you move, you actually have that expansion point. You have that place for that knee to sit into. You have a place for basically the seat of your pants to sit into, allowing you to move. And that also reduces things like pant rise, another voice of the customer thing. I hate it when my pants come up over top of the boots. Putting all that movement into the gear keeps those pant legs in place. But one of the big things within athletics also is the Kevlar meshing that we've put into it in the jacket and in the pants. So in the jacket, we've put it across the back of the jacket underneath the SCBA. It actually allows for better, like Jeff kind of talked about, that wicking aspect, to be able to pull that moisture to the moisture barrier so that it can turn into vapor and get pulled to the outside world easier, quicker. It also reduces the amount of fabric inside of the gear. Again, reducing the weight out of it, makes it more comfortable, makes it lighter weight. In the pants, we've incorporated that meshing into the crotch and extending it all the way down the legs to allow for that stretching and that movement. It also reduces binding. It reduces hobbling in the crotch. Again, another one of those big voice of the customers thing, that every time you get up on an apparatus, you got to pull your pants up because the crotch typically would hang too low. So we've incorporated all those things into it with voice of the customer to make it as comfortable as possible. And really, that's what we're after is safety is number one, but two, we want it comfortable. We almost want it so that firefighters don't even know that they're wearing turnout gear. And one of the big things that I hear all the time is that, is this really turnout gear? It doesn't feel like turnout gear. It is. It's just the next generation of what turnout gear should be. Great.
Thanks, Chris. So, really good information today. As we're going to kind of transition to questions here, but again, looking at Globe Athletics and how that's focused on firefighter functionality, fitness, and comfort. Great insight today to the program or to the product. So we'll take your questions. Go ahead and send them in. We already have a couple here. We'll start with those, but please go ahead and send your questions in for Caitlin, Chris, and Jeff, and we'll get to those. So first question here, Caitlin, is for a slow volunteer fire station, one structure fire, mutual aid over a 10-year period, can the turnouts go past the 10-year mark to save money? NFPA is an advisory board, not an enforcer, nor does OSHA or NIOSH have anything to do with that.
So great question, one that we receive a lot. So that 10-year maximum service life is actually from NFPA 1851. So that's the standard on the selection, care, and maintenance of your gear. So it's 10 years for structural turnout gear, 5 years actually for the outer shell for proximity gear. But why that 10-year maximum service life was initially put into place was to ensure that firefighters are in the latest and greatest innovation. When you think everything from the designs of next generation turnout gear like athletics to specialty fabrics, that Tenkata, they're always innovating. They're always looking at what can we do better. We want to make sure that that gear is not 10 to 20 years old and is no longer in the best turnout gear. So that was why that 10-year maximum service life was put into place. That said, for those who are unaware, NFPA 1851 is currently planning for the next edition of the standard. It will actually be consolidating with SCBA, becoming NFPA 1850. So public comments on changes that firefighters would like to see, I believe that was due early June. I want to say like June 1st. So I would be shocked if there is not a public comment that asks for the maximum service life to be extended with the savings in mind. I mean, we hear it from firefighters all the time. Hey, I did have it manufactured at this date, but it wasn't put into service until a while later. It barely has any wear and tear. This is good gear. Why can't I still use it? So I expect this to be one of the main discussion points in the next iteration of NFPA 1850, knowing that that is a very real need with turnout gear. And if it's still usable, if it's still serviceable, why can't they use it? But for now, per NFPA 1851, that maximum service life of 10 years is required to remain compliant.
Great, thank you. And so while we're on 1851, Caitlin, let's talk about the risk assessment and how today's attendees can find the NFPA risk assessment for PPE, and then what they should do with it.
Perfect. So as Chris mentioned earlier in the webinar, risk assessments are underutilized, which is really a shame considering that they're required to remain compliant with NFPA 1851. So important for fire departments to complete these before their next PPE evaluation and selection. They're actually, fun fact, required by the state in Texas. So it is something that all fire departments should be looking through. And what the risk assessment is frankly a great tool to walk through all of the factors that we've been talking about today: demographics, response incidents, hazards and the severity of those hazards, priorities in your next PPE selection, how your current gear fits. Do you like it? What do you need to change? So after you walk through this detailed exercise, you'll have a really good idea about what your firefighters need and what needs to be included in your next spec. That said, the risk assessment can be daunting to cover all of those areas. So this is actually something we've recently launched. It's publicly available. It's on MSA's website. So I encourage everyone to go check it out. If you Google MSA risk assessment, it will bring it right up. And then you can actually walk through all of the steps I just mentioned right on your computer. And then once you're complete, hit save. You now have that digital record that you walked through your risk assessment, which again, baseline, it's important for compliance, but it really is a great guide to use when you're evaluating your next PPE. So again, it's on our website, a great new tool to use. It's free, go check it out, but hopefully this will be a really nice benefit to firefighters who need to complete this step, but don't really know where to start.
Thanks, Caitlin. Chris, we'll go to you for this one here. How is athletics thermal protection when it comes to TPP and THL ratings?
Yeah, from a TPP standpoint, it is in excess of 40 TPP. And then from a THL standpoint, in excess of 300 THL. So when we look at NFPA in terms of minimums and in kind of that sweet spot, the goal has been to get to that 300 level. And with athletics, we've been able to get there because of, and that's mainly because of the materials. That's because of the stretch material, the weight of the stretch material, and then also the nano liner system. Nano is a DuPont product, very fine filament nanofibers that tend to trap a lot of air inside the gear, so it gives it great thermal protection. Yet, because of the lightweightness aspect of it, the thinness of it, it allows for really, really good breathabilities as well.
Okay. Thank you. And Jeff, the PBI stretch, you mentioned that earlier as far as lightweight and flexible material. Can you talk about the durability for that PBI stretch?
Sure. Typically, or historically, when you go lightweight with outer shells, you actually sacrifice quite a bit of durability. That was one of the challenges in the development of this product, working with MSA Globe to come out with something where that didn't happen. And so the outer shell, the outer shell PBI stretch is actually 4 times stronger as far as durability goes when you look at the other PBI outer shells that are out there on the market.
Okay. Thank you. And then Caitlin, are there any female sizes, or I'm sorry, are there female sizes for other Globe turnout gear styles? And also, is there female sizing for Globe boots as well?
A great question. Obviously, we focused on athletics today, but Globe, we do offer then female garment patterns and sizing for all of our other turnout gear styles. So it's really important, again, knowing that no matter which style the fire department selects, they have gear that properly fits each and every firefighter. So something I do want to mention specifically that's been received really well is our Globe pant system. So this system, this pant that goes with any of our jackets, it offers 4 different fits. So it's slim, regular, relaxed, and then women's cut. So that again, across all different body types, there is a pant, a structural pant that fits the firefighter and is comfortable for them. I will say it's usually pretty funny to share. Maybe women actually do not prefer the women's fit. They like the slim, they want the relaxed fit. It all depends on preference as well as body type. And that goes both ways. We will actually have male firefighters who prefer the extra room that the women's pant offers them, and then that will be their selection. So the 4 fits across the board were made with different body types and preferences in mind so that firefighters, again, are comfortable. And all of these fits, no matter which one you select, it's at no additional cost. We're not charging you more to ensure that all of your firefighters are safe. So it's a great system for our turnout gear. Whichever style you select, know that it will fit your firefighters, including female firefighters. But you also asked about boots, Peter. And what's great about boots, we do have both male and female boot sizing. You know, we're not just simply sizing down. Again, there are changes, there are differences between both. So we do have women's sizing that ranges from 5 to 12 foot size. And in between that is half sizes. So 5.5 to an 11.5. Again, standard, no price change between those. But again, really nice to make sure that no matter what their preference is with their boot, male or female, they have that sizing available. We have 4 different widths so that if they have more of a narrow foot or more of a wider foot, that offers another aspect of comfort when they're wearing their Globe boots. And then last but not least, we even have then the wide calf option, which adds about 3 inches in circumference around the top of the boot. So no matter the shape, the preference, the size, across gear to boots, we have options available to make sure that all firefighters are comfortable or protected properly. So it's something that's you will see in every aspect of every Globe product on the market.
Great. Thanks, Caitlin. Chris or Jeff, we'll send this one to you. Does athletics require any special care or storage during its lifetime?
I don't know if we can say special care. It's all based on NFPA 1851, which talks about care and maintenance, how to care for it, and then also how to store it. So basically, you know, not below a -25 or above 180 degrees, you know, in terms of storage, store in airtight containers unless new and unused, different things like that. So there aren't really special requirements with athletics outside of the standard for every other material that's out there.
Okay.
Yeah, I would jump in to add to that, Chris. You're right. We wanted to make sure that simply following the guidelines set forth by 1851 is all you had to worry about. There's nothing special you really have to do. But just like all FR fabrics, the #1 killer is UV exposure to UV rays, for example, the sun. And so it doesn't matter if it's stretch or anything else. It's just good to emphasize that that's the #1 problem that people don't realize. So it's important to protect it against UV using gear bags. And it's all spelled out in 1851, but not everybody in the fire service realizes just how much degradation occurs from that exposure.
Okay. Thanks. And Jeff, to tag on, we have another question here for you. How does the stretch factor of the outer shell material compare to other stretchy fabrics?
So trying to come up with a inherently FR fabric that's stretchy is a little bit different than, say, a stretch jean that has four-way stretch. But I think we did a pretty good job. The PBI stretch has about a 10% stretch factor in one direction. And MSA Globe has done a great job in aligning these panels to utilize that unidirectional stretch to fit their needs for the athletics garment. So compared to other stretchy garments like regular clothes, it's not quite the same as far as comfort and ability to stretch as much. But in the FR world, it's life-changing, and it's quite a revelation towards the future.
Great. Thank you. Chris, question for you here. Can you discuss the Globe Guard components and the particulate blocking benefits?
Yeah, so NFPA in the last edition put in as an option for particulate barriers in turnout gear, which is, for the most part, it's around the bottom of the sweep of the jacket, it's in the crotch area, and it's down in the bottom of the pant legs. And basically the ultimate goal is to reduce the amount of debris or particulates that can migrate up the pant legs or get in through the fly area or get in from the interface from the coat to the pant. And basically what Globe Guards are designed to do is to reduce that. And studies have shown that there can be up to as much as an 80% reduction in particulates getting inside the gear by adding those things into the gear. Now, the one thing that you really have to look at, though, is when we talk about NFPA, NFPA is a minimum standard. So there's a minimum breathability component there. And if you just throw in things like Globe Guard or any other particulate system in there with the minimum standard, you're going to start to encapsulate the firefighter. So it's really important to look at your breathability, your gear's breathability, and try to maximize that as much as possible if you're adding these things in there. Because the one thing we don't want to do is, reduce the amount of particulates getting in, but then expose the firefighter to more heat stress issues. So yeah, it's still a work in progress in terms of NFPA. This is all new in the fire service at this point. So we're still working through, that sweet spot basically. But, our recommendation is having a breathable moisture barrier as part of the particulate to maximize as much breathability as possible.
Right. Thank you, Chris. And Ken, a question here for you. Can any ISP in the U.S. repair athletics turnout gear?
So yes and no. I'll explain what that means. For an ISP to be certified, it's actually 2 steps. It's not only third-party certification, so they need to be verified, make sure that they meet all of the requirements that are set forth by NFPA 1851 on the selection, care, and maintenance of gear. So they have to not only be certified, but make sure that their personnel is trained to complete the repairs on all layers of the turnout gear. But then the next step, we want to make sure that they feel comfortable with Globe gear specifically. So the ISP, we highly recommend, in order for them to be listed on our site as a Globe trained facility, they need to then take Globe specific 1851 training. Again, just to reiterate what's important, what they need to be skilled at, how to handle Globe gear. So most ISPs in the US and Canada have completed these 2 steps. So that's why I would say it'd be pretty surprising if an ISP has not. But just to be safe, we do list who has completed the certification on our website. Just simply Google Globe Trained Facility, and it will bring you to the webpage that lists the individual third-party ISPs who have gone through the necessary steps. Again, just to make sure that it's certified, they're compliant, so that you don't get yourself into any tricky situations.
Thank you, Caitlin. It looks like this will be the last question. We have demand for firefighter PPE, but cost is a barrier. I want to clarify, is there any cost-effective models beyond athletics that meets the standards and safety, including comfort?
That's a great question. I can take that first, and then Chris and Jeff, feel free to add. But obviously cost, with cost skyrocketing, especially over the last few years, inflation, I mean, we're feeling it in every aspect of our lives. With costs increasing, departments always need to keep that in mind of their personnel safety while juggling then their budget. We firmly believe you should not have to sacrifice one for the other. So Globe Athletics, it is next generation. It does have exclusive, innovative materials that can ensure it's flexible, ensure it functions and fits properly. But we also have other turnout gear styles and composites from our partner, Tenkata, that will still exceed the standard, exceed NFPA 1871 thermal and breathability requirements that do not then have the athletics price tag. So again, depending on your budget, that's where we would highly encourage you to get with your local sales rep or reach out to our team. And that's where we can help guide you based on your risk assessment and your department's needs, based on your budget, what is the best option for you. And we can walk you through in detail how our other turnout gear styles still go beyond the standard, still offer that excellent fit for all firefighters, still function properly for all incidents, and still have those flexible design requirements that we just see as necessary in today's day and age.
Awesome, Caitlin. Thank you so much. I appreciate that insight. So we're going to wrap up here today. Again, there's a link there on the browser now, or on your browser, I'm sorry, to get some additional information about athletics. But a big thanks to Caitlin, Chris, and Jeff today for sharing this insight. A lot of good questions came from the discussion, so we appreciate you putting the time in to share this with the folks. For the folks who may have joined us a few minutes late asking about the archive, you can find that at the same link that you registered today. Just log back into that link in a few hours and you can watch the entire presentation. It'll be archived on firehouse.com. Thanks to MSA Globe for this today, and everyone out there, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.